It was a quiet morning in a rich, white neighborhood. Big houses stood in a clean row. Green lawns looked perfect. Everything looked peaceful from outside. Inside one of the biggest houses, a black maid named Sarah was cleaning the living room. She wore simple clothes. Her hair was tied back. She worked slowly and carefully. She wiped the glass table. She cleaned the floor. She wanted everything to look perfect. Sarah liked this job. It was new for her. She needed the money. She also wanted to do her best. She believed that hard work could change her life. Outside, in the house next door, a white woman named Mrs. Thompson stood near her window. She held her coffee cup. She looked out and watched Sarah through the window. Her eyes became narrow. "Who is that woman?" Mrs. Thompson whispered to herself. "She does not look like she belongs here." She watched Sarah move around the house. She saw Sarah carrying cleaning tools. But instead of thinking she was a worker, Mrs. Thompson felt angry and suspicious. She took out her phone. "I don't trust this," she said. "People like her should not be in this area." Mrs. Thompson quietly called the police. "Yes," she said on the phone. "There is a strange woman inside my neighbor's house. I think she is breaking in." She smiled slightly after ending the call. Back inside, Sarah felt a strange feeling. She felt like someone was watching her. She stopped cleaning for a second. She looked toward the window. She saw a curtain move. Her heart beat faster. She shook her head. "Just focus," she whispered to herself. "Do your job." She picked up her mop and continued working. A few minutes later, a distant sound broke the silence. Police sirens. At first, they were very far. Sarah did not think much about it. Sirens were common in the city. But the sound became louder. Closer. Closer. Sarah stopped moving. Her hands began to shake. She slowly walked toward the front window. She looked outside. A police car turned into the street. Then another one. Sarah's breath became heavy. "Oh no," she whispered. Neighbors began to step outside their houses. Some stood on their lawns. Some held phones. They looked curious. They whispered to each other. The police car stopped in front of the house. Two officers stepped out. One officer was tall and serious. The other officer looked younger and unsure. They walked to the front door. Knock, knock, knock. Sarah took a deep breath and opened the door. "Yes?" she asked softly. The tall officer looked at her from head to toe. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I work here," Sarah said. "I am a maid." The officer raised his eyebrow. "Do you have proof?" he asked. Sarah pointed to her cleaning tools. "I clean this house. My boss hired me." At that moment, Mrs. Thompson walked over from next door. She crossed her arms. "That is not true," Mrs. Thompson said loudly. "I have never seen her before. I think she broke into this house." People in the street started to whisper. "Maybe she is lying. She does not look like she belongs here. Why is she inside such a big house?" Sarah felt her face burn with shame. "That is not true," Sarah said. Her voice shook. "I work here. I'm not a thief." The tall officer looked serious. "We receive a call," he said. "We must investigate." Sarah's hand shook more. "Please," she said. "My boss will come soon. He can explain everything." Mrs. Thompson laughed. "Your boss," she said. "Someone like you does not work for someone important." The crowd laughed softly. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking badly. The younger officer looked at her for a moment. He looked unsure. He could see fear in her eyes. But the tall officer stayed cold. "Until we confirm," he said, "you must stay right here." Sarah swallowed hard. She looked at the empty street. She whispered, almost to herself, "My boss is coming. Please wait." Mrs. Thompson smiled with pride. "We will see about that," she said. The camera slowly zoomed in on Sarah's face. Fear, pain, hope, all mixed together. And one big question filled the air. Who is her boss? And will he come in time? The street felt different now. What was once a quiet place now felt heavy and cold. People stood in small groups. Some recorded with their phones. Some whispered behind their hands. Sarah stood near the front door. Her shoulders were tight. Her hands were locked together. She tried to stay calm, but fear lived in her eyes. The tall officer stepped closer. "Ma'am," he said in a hard voice, "we need to check your bag." Sarah nodded slowly. She handed over her small work bag. Inside were only simple things. A lunchbox, cleaning gloves, a small towel, A picture of a young son. The officer took out the picture. "Who is this?" he asked. "My son," Sarah said quietly. "He is 6. For a short second, the officer paused, but his face quickly went back to cold. Mrs. Thompson rolled her eyes. "That does not prove anything," she said. "Anyone can carry a picture." The younger officer looked uncomfortable. He shifted his feet. He looked at Sarah again. He could see she was scared. "Where's your boss right now?" he asked. "I don't know," Sarah said. "He said he may come later today." Mrs. Thompson laughed loudly. "Of course," she said. "That is what they all say." The words cut Sarah like a knife. The tall officer crossed his arms. "We called the homeowner," he said. No one answered. Sarah's heart dropped. "I just started this job," she said. "Please. I am telling the truth." Mrs. Thompson stepped closer. "You people always have excuses," she said. "This is a good neighborhood. We don't allow strangers here." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink them away. "I'm not a stranger," Sarah said. "I work here." A woman in the crowd whispered, "She looks guilty." Another voice said, "Why else would police be here?" Every word felt heavy. The tall officer looked at his partner. "If we cannot confirm," he said, "we may need to take her in." Sarah froze. "Take me in," she whispered. Her knees felt weak. "Please," she said, "just give me a little time." The younger officer looked at her again. "Do you have your boss's number?" he asked. Zava nodded fast. "Yes. Yes, I do." Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone. She pressed the number. Ring, ring, ring. No answer. Her heart beat faster. She tried again. Ring, ring. Voicemail. Her shoulders dropped. Mrs. Thompson smiled like she had won. "See," she said. "No boss. Just lies." The tall officer sighed. "This is not looking good," he said. Sarah felt her chest tighten. Tears rolled down her face now. She did not try to hide them. "I swear," she said. "I'm just trying to work. I'm just trying to take care of my child." Some people in the crowd looked away, but others kept watching like it was a show. Mrs. Thompson crossed her arms again. "You should have thought about that before breaking in," she said. "I did not break in," Sarah cried. "I was hired." Her voice cracked. The younger officer stepped forward a little. "Ma'am," he said softly, "try to calm down." But how could she be calm? Her whole life felt like it was falling apart in front of strangers. The tall officer reached for his radio. "I'm going to report this," he said. "If we don't get confirmation, we will proceed." Sarah closed her eyes for a second. She thought about her son. She thought about his smile. She thought about how she promised him she would bring home food that night. Her hands began to shake harder. Mrs. Thompson leaned toward another neighbor and whispered something. They both laughed quietly. The street felt cruel. Sarah opened her eyes again. "Please," she said, almost begging now. "Just wait a little longer." The tall officer looked at his watch. "You have one more chance," he said. "Call your boss again." Zava nodded fast. She called again. Ring, ring. No answer. The silence was loud. The tall officer looked serious. "Ma'am," he said, "if we cannot confirm soon." He did not finish the sentence, but everyone knew what it meant. Sarah stood there, shaking, surrounded by doubt, judgment, and cold eyes. And somewhere far away, the one person who could save her was still not there. Sarah stood on the front steps, surrounded by police, neighbors, and cold stares. But inside her mind, she was no longer on that street. Her thoughts went back to where her real life began. She remembered waking up before sunrise every day. A small, old alarm clock on a broken table. A tiny apartment with thin walls. The sound of cars outside. The smell of cheap coffee. Sarah would sit on the edge of her bed and take a deep breath. "Another long day," she would whisper. She had learned not to complain. Complaining did not pay bills. Complaining did not buy food. She would get dressed in simple clothes. She would check on her son, Ethan, sleeping in his small bed. She would sit beside him for a moment. She would brush his hair gently. "I'm doing this for you," she would whisper. Ethan was her world. His father left years ago. No woudbie, no help, no support. Sarah became mother and father at the same time. She worked 2 jobs before, one at a diner, one cleaning offices at night. Her feet always hurt. Her back always ached, but she still smiled for her son. At school, Ethan's shoes were old. Sarah noticed kids laughing at them once. That night, Sarah cried quietly in the bathroom so Ethan would not hear. She promised herself, "One day, my son will not feel less than anyone." That is why this new job mattered so much. When Sarah got the call about this house, she could not believe it. A big house, good pay, respectful boss. She held the phone with shaking hands. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Yes," the voice said. "You come recommended. We trust you." Sarah almost dropped the phone. That night, she hugged Ethan tight. "Mommy got a better job," she told him. Ethan smiled. "Does that mean more food?" he asked. Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. "Yes, baby," she said. More food. Back to the present. Sarah stood in front of the house. The same house that gave her hope. The same house, now turning into her worst nightmare. She looked at the windows. She remembered cleaning them carefully. She wanted the boss to be proud of her. She remembered how kind he was on her first day. "You are safe here," he told her. "This is your workplace. No one will treat you bad here." Those words now hurt. She wondered, where is he now? Why is he not here? A tear rolled down her cheek. Mrs. Thompson's voice pulled her back. "She is just acting," Mrs. Thompson said. "They always play the victim." Those words felt like fire. Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to say, "I'm a person. I'm a mother. I'm trying." But her voice felt small. The younger officer looked at her. "You okay?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded, but she was not okay. Her hands were cold. Her heart felt heavy. She thought about Ethan again. Who would pick him up from school if she got arrested? Who would cook his dinner? Who would tell him everything would be okay? Her chest tightened. "I can't let this happen," she whispered to herself. She stood taller. "I'm not a criminal," Sarah said louder this time. "I'm a worker. I'm a mother. I am an honest person." Some people in the crowd went quiet. For a moment, there was a small silence. But Mrs. Thompson broke it. "Nice story," she said. "Still does not change the facts." "What facts?" "Only lies." The tall officer looked tired. "We understand you are emotional," he said. "But emotion is not proof." Sarah closed her eyes for 1 second. She took a deep breath. She opened them again. "I don't have money," she said. "I don't have power, but I have truth." Her voice shook, but her words were real. "I clean houses," she continued. "I raise my son. I help people when I can. That is who I am." The crowd listened. Some faces changed. Some looked ashamed. Some still judged. But Sarah did not look down anymore. She looked straight ahead. Because this was not just about a job. This was about her life, her dignity, her son's future. And she refused to let it be taken without a fight. The air felt heavy. It was no longer just about a maid in front of a house. It felt like the whole street was holding its breath. Sarah stood still. Her hands were cold. Her legs felt weak. Every face around her felt like a wall closing in. The tall officer checked his watch again. "We have waited long enough," he said. His voice was firm. "This is your last chance." Mrs. Thompson smiled. "Good," she said. "This has gone on too long." Sarah's heart dropped. "Please," Sarah said. "Just one more minute. That is all I ask." The younger officer looked at the tall officer. "Maybe we can wait a little," he started. "No," the tall officer said. "We have rules." The crowd moved closer. Phones were up. Cameras were recording. Sarah felt like she was on a stage, but this was not a show. This was her life. The tall officer stepped closer to her. "Call your boss now," he said. "If no answer, we move forward." Sarah nodded. Her hands shook as she held her phone. She pressed the call button. Ring, ring. Her heart beat with every ring. Mrs. Thompson crossed her arms tighter. "Stop wasting our time," she said. Ring. No answer. Sarah swallowed hard. She tried again. Ring, ring. Still no answer. Tears filled her eyes again. "I don't understand," she whispered. "He always answers." The tall officer reached toward his belt. Not yet handcuffs, but close. Very close. "Ma'am," he said, "step aside." Sarah felt her knees almost give out. She thought, this is it. This is how it ends. The younger officer stepped in front of her a little. "Sir," he said quietly, "she does not look dangerous." "That is not the point," the tall officer replied. "We must follow procedure." Mrs. Thompson clapped her hands once. "Finally," she said. "Do your job." Her voice was sharp. Sarah looked at Mrs. Thompson. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked softly. "I never hurt you." Mrs. Thompson did not answer. She only looked away. The tall officer took out his radio. "I'm reporting this now," he said. Static sound filled the air. "Possible unlawful entry. Preparing to detain." Those words felt like chains. Sarah closed her eyes. She pictured Ethan's face. She pictured him waiting by the window after school. "Mommy," he would say, "where are you?" Her chest hurt. "Please," Sarah whispered again. "Please." The tall officer reached for her arm. Not grabbing yet, but close enough that she could feel it. The crowd went quiet. Even the birds seemed to stop. Then, a sound broke the silence. Not a voice. Not a siren. A low, deep engine sound. At first, it was far. A smooth, powerful sound. Some people turned their heads. "What is that?" someone whispered. The sound grew louder. Closer. A luxury engine. The kind you do not hear every day. The tall officer paused. Mrs. Thompson looked down the street. A black car appeared at the end of the road. Long, shiny. Expensive. The crowd slowly moved to the side. The car drove slowly, like it owned the street. Sarah opened her eyes. She looked toward the sound. Her heart started to beat faster. Hope. Small, but real. The black car came closer. Everyone could see it now. The windows were dark. The body of the car shined under the sun. People whispered, "That looks expensive." "Who is that? Is that for someone here?" Mrs. Thompson frowned. "That has nothing to do with this," she said. But her voice was not as strong now. The tall officer lowered his radio. The car slowed down, right in front of the house. The engine stopped. Silence. Deep silence. The car door did not open yet. Seconds felt like minutes. Sarah held her breath. The whole street waited. One moment. One sound. One person. And everything was about to change. The black luxury car sat in front of the house like a king on the street. No one spoke. Even Mrs. Thompson stayed quiet. The tall officer stood straight. The younger officer looked alert. Sarah's heart beat fast. Her eyes stayed on the car door. Slowly, the back door opened. A polished black shoe touched the ground. Then a tall man stepped out. He wore a dark suit. His clothes were clean and sharp. A gold watch shined on his wrist. His face was calm, but strong. He looked around the street. At the police. At the crowd. At Sarah. The crowd whispered, "Who is that? He looks important. That car must cost a lot." The man walked forward with slow, confident steps. "What is going on here?" he asked in a deep, calm voice. The tall officer stepped forward. "Sir," he said, "this is a police matter." The man looked at him. "And I am the owner of this house," the man said. "So, it is also my matter." The street froze. Mrs. Thompson's face changed. The owner," someone whispered. Sarah's breath caught. The man looked at Sarah again. "Are you okay?" he asked. Sarah's voice was small. "Yes, sir," she said. "They think I broke in." The man's eyes hardened. "Broke in," he repeated. He turned to the tall officer. "This woman works for me," he said. "She's my employee. She was hired by me." The younger officer's eyes widened. "Sir," he said, "we received a call saying there was a break-in." The man turned slowly toward Mrs. Thompson. "Who made that call?" he asked. Mrs. Thompson did not speak at first. Her lips were tight. "I did," she said finally. "I was just being careful." The man looked at her. "Careful?" he asked. "By accusing an innocent woman?" Mrs. Thompson lifted her chin. "I didn't know," she said. She looked suspicious. The word hung in the air. Suspicious. The man took one step closer. "Suspicious because she's black?" he asked calmly. Mrs. Thompson's face turned red. "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. "Then what did you mean?" he asked. She had no answer. The man turned back to the officers. "I can show you proof," he said. "This is my property. She is hired legally." He pulled out his phone. With a few taps, he showed documents. The tall officer looked at the screen. His face changed. "I see," the officer said. "Everything checks out." The younger officer looked relieved. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said to Sarah. "We should have handled this better." Sarah felt her knees shake. Tears filled her eyes again. This time, not from fear. From relief. The man looked at Sarah. "You did nothing wrong," he said. "You were treated unfairly." Sarah nodded. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Mrs. Thompson stepped back slowly. "This is a misunderstanding," she said. "I was just trying to protect the neighborhood." The man turned to her again. "You did not protect anything," he said. You harmed someone. His voice was not loud, but it was strong. This woman is honest, he continued. She works hard. She deserves respect. The crowd was quiet now. No whispers. No laughs. Only shame on some faces. The tall officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, he said to Mrs. Thompson, making a false report is serious. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened. I didn't mean, she started. You should think before you call, the officer said. Sarah stood taller now. For the first time, she felt seen. The man turned back to Sarah. You are safe, he said. No one will touch you. Sarah took a deep breath. For the first time that day, she felt like she could breathe. The power in the street had shifted. The one who was weak was now strong. The one who judged was now silent. And the one who was humiliated was now protected. The street no longer felt loud. It felt heavy with truth. Mrs. Thompson stood very still. Her face was pale. The confident smile she had earlier was gone. The man in the dark suit stood tall in front of her. You accuse my employee, he said, without proof, without reason. Mrs. Thompson crossed her arms again, but this time it looked weak. I was just being careful, she said. People don't belong everywhere. The words made the crowd uncomfortable. The man's eyes stayed on her. That is not being careful, he said. That is judging. The tall officer stepped closer. Ma'am, he said to Mrs. Thompson, you told dispatch there was a break-in. Yes, she said. I thought. You thought wrong, the officer said. That is a false report. Mrs. Thompson's voice became small. I was just worried about my property, she said. It was not your property, the man said calmly. It is mine. That fact hit hard. The crowd whispered again. She doesn't even own that house. She called police on someone in another man's home. Mrs. Thompson looked around. For the first time, she looked embarrassed. Sarah stood quietly near the door. She did not smile. She did not laugh. She only watched. The younger officer turned to Sarah. Ma'am, he said gently, we apologize for how you were treated. Sarah nodded. Thank you, she said softly. The tall officer spoke again. There will be a report filed, he said. False emergency calls are serious. Mrs. Thompson's eyes filled with fear. A report? She said. You're going to write me up? Yes, the officer said. You wasted police time and accused an innocent person. Mrs. Thompson's voice shook. I didn't know it would go this far, she said. That is the problem, the man said. You did not think about her life. He pointed gently toward Sarah. She is a mother, he said. She works hard. You almost destroyed her day, her job, her peace. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she did not feel small. She felt seen. One neighbor spoke up quietly. I saw her cleaning every day, the woman said. She always says hello. She is kind. Another neighbor added, yeah, she never caused trouble. Mrs. Thompson looked shocked. The crowd was no longer on her side. The man turned to the officers. Is there anything else needed? He asked. No, sir, the tall officer said. We will handle the report and clear the scene. The younger officer looked at Sarah again. I'm truly sorry, he said. You didn't deserve that. Sarah took a deep breath. Thank you, she said. I just want to work. Mrs. Thompson looked down. Her shoulders dropped. The strong woman from earlier was gone. The man looked at her one last time. Next time, he said, learn before you judge. Mrs. Thompson did not reply. She had no words left. The officers began to walk back to their cars. The crowd slowly broke apart. People went back to their houses. But the feeling in the street had changed. Sarah stood in the doorway of the house. The man stood beside her. You did well, he said quietly. You stayed strong. Sarah nodded. I was very scared, she said. But I didn't lie. That is why you won, he said. For the first time, Sarah smiled a little. Not a big smile, but a real one. Mrs. Thompson walked back to her house slowly. No one looked at her with respect now. No one waved. Her power was gone. The lie had failed. The truth had won. And Sarah, the woman who was treated like nothing, was now standing with dignity. The streets slowly went back to normal. Police cars drove away. Neighbors went back inside their homes. But for Sarah, nothing felt normal anymore. She stood in front of the big house, taking deep breaths. The fear that had lived in her chest all morning was finally starting to fade. The man in the dark suit turned to her. You could go inside now, he said kindly. You are safe. Sarah nodded. Thank you, sir, she said. I don't know what I would have done if you didn't come. He looked at her with respect. You did not need saving, he said. You only needed truth. They walked inside the house. The quiet inside felt different now. The house that once felt like a workplace now felt like a place of protection. Sarah sat down for a moment. Her hand was still shaking a little. The man poured her a glass of water. Take your time, he said. She drank slowly. I was so scared, Sarah said. I thought I would lose everything today. You didn't, he said. You stood for yourself. He sat across from her. I want you to know something, he continued. I did not hire you just to clean. Sarah looked confused. What do you mean? She asked. I hire people I trust, he said. People with good hearts. I saw that in you. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. I try to be a good person, she said, even when life is hard. He nodded. That is rare, he said. He reached into his jacket and took out an envelope. I was planning to give you this later, he said. But after today, I think now is the right time. Sarah looked at the envelope with shaking hands. What is it? She asked. Open it, he said. She slowly opened it. Inside was a letter and a check. Her eyes went wide. This is a bonus, he said, and a small raise. Sarah covered her mouth. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you will stay, he said with a small smile. Sarah laughed through tears. Yes, she said, I will stay. She thought about Ethan. New shoes, more food, less worry. Her heart felt full. Outside, Mrs. Thompson watched from her window. She saw Sarah inside the house. She saw the man standing beside her. For the first time, she felt small. She looked away. Inside, Sarah stood taller. She was not just a maid. She was a worker, a mother, a woman with dignity. Before leaving for the day, Sarah picked up her phone. She called her son's school. Yes, she said. I will be there to pick him up. Her voice sounded lighter than it had in years. The man walked her to the door. Remember, he said, never let anyone make you feel less. Sarah nodded. I won't, she said. She stepped outside. The sun felt warmer. The street looked different. Not because the houses changed, but because she changed. She walked with her head high. For once, she did not feel invisible. She felt seen. She felt respected. And somewhere, a woman who judged learned a lesson. Not every lesson comes easy, but every lie meets truth one day. And every person, no matter how small they seem, deserves respect.